Welcome to the Late Nite Shift. My name's Lavender. Tonight, we're going to be driving down some haunted highways. So buckle up tight, get comfy for the ride and, try ignore the interloper in the rearview mirror, because their final destination has long passed.
Today, 20 years later, they still have no idea what you're about. What you're about. What you're about. What you're about.
Ironically open, Friday the 13th of May, 1988. Located in northern England, the A616 road connects Manchester to the M1 motorway. The section north of Sheffield is known as the Stocksbridge Bypass. Believed by some to be constructed on hallowed ground, the road was initially proposed to divert heavy traffic around the towns of Stocksbridge and Deepcar, though in doing so, some believe something was disturbed. These days, it is notorious for having many fatal accidents and frequent head-on collisions, even being deemed one of the most dangerous roads in the world, though, even before construction, reports of phantom carriages driven by the undead and black shuck hellhound sightings were prevalent in the area. During construction, numerous reports of strange happenings were all too common, with equipment inexplicably ceasing to operate correctly, sometimes failing altogether, though faulty equipment wasn't the only thing slowing the building process, as some workers were so terrified they left the job, never to return. In the September of 1987, two seasoned security guards were doing their rounds along Stocksbridge Bypass when they encountered a group of children singing and dancing around an electricity panel in a field. The issue was, they were on an active construction site, miles from any form of residential housing. It was past 12 midnight, and the children were said to be wearing long outdated, Victorian-style clothing. Shaken, the security guards stopped their vehicle only for the group of children to vanish into thin air. The men exited their vehicle and headed to investigate where they had seen the group, only to find no trace of the children, only their own footprints in the dirt beneath their feet. Shortly thereafter, as they stood in the field, perplexed at what they had just experienced, the men shuddered, suddenly aware of a feeling of being watched. Looking up towards the newly constructed P-Royd Bridge, standing silently, looking down at them was a large shadowy figure, clad in a black hooded robe. Later deemed the monk, his piercing gaze, laced with malevolence, stared directly into their souls, causing a visceral feeling of terror in the two men. As the guards regained their senses, they jumped into their car and drove to the bridge, never taking their eyes off the strange figure. When they pulled up, their fear returned. When they directed their headlights towards the figure, the headlights passed straight through it. When they drove closer, the figure vanished, much like the children before it. The pair promptly fled the scene, calling their boss out at 4:30 a.m, to which he found both men in a state of shock, physically shaking, and one of the men even crying. Still shook up by the events, early next morning, they consulted the local police. Officers initially joked the two men should seek help from the local church, rather than the events being a police matter. Taken quite literally, the police later received a call from the local church, stating the two men refused to leave, forcing the aforementioned officer and his partner to investigate the bypass a few nights later. Initially thinking it was no big deal, the officers concluded the security guards were mistaken, the culprit being a piece of unsecured building material banging and swaying in the wind. However, just moments later, the officers would have a similar encounter, seeing a figure chest high to the windows of the police car, darting from driver to passenger side in an instant. After getting out to investigate, nobody was to be seen. As the officers were leaving the scene, several loud bangs were heard, almost as if the police car was being hit with a baseball bat. After all these events had unfolded, the prior mentioned security guards left their respective positions, one within the week, the other within the month, refusing to ever return to the bypass, whether it be day or night, because of how disturbed the events had left them. Several future crashes have been blamed on the said monk, often appearing in the middle of the road, sometimes in the back of people's cars. Theories of who the monk could have been brought forward, potentially from the Hunshelf Priory, disillusioned by the harsh autocratic life, seeking revenge after being buried on unconsecrated ground. Others believe something more sinister is afoot, describing the presence as evil. A third proposition is that the monk is a Junai Cuculate, a hoarded spirit from pagan beliefs. Theories proposed for the children have been anything from children lost to the local mines, a toppled stagecoach, or even Bronze Age sacrifice, though the latter is unlikely, due to the way they were described as being dressed in Victorian attire. To this day, the children are often heard. One user of the Sheffield forum reported hearing the children singing while camping in the area as recent as 2004. One last bizarre incident before we reach our next stretch of highway happened in broad daylight in the early 90s. Known as the Jogger, sighted by a couple, a grey-clad figure running at high speeds, arms and legs flailing, but several feet off the ground. The figure would go on to jump head-on in front of the couple's car, once again disappearing without a trace, naturally leaving the couple perplexed and shook up by the events that had unfolded in front of them. As we carry on driving, we arrive at our next stretch of highway, known as the Kuala Lumpur Carrick Expressway. Formerly known as the Kuala Lumpur Carrick Highway 8, Carrick Expressway is a 40-mile stretch of highway located between Kuala Lumpur and Carrick that connects Kuala Lumpur to the Genting Highlands. Constructed in 1970, later opening to the public in 1977, long dark and windswept, this highway has a reputation for accidents that sadly, more often than not, lead to fatalities. The largest, no doubt, happened on February 28, 1990, when a passenger bus collided with a lorry, an FRU truck, 2 taxis and 6 cars, leaving 17 dead and 16 more injured. As such, it is no surprise that a number of horror stories come into fruition on this particular stretch. Reported to be one of the most haunted highways in the world, it is claimed that many people driving late at night see strange creatures, lost school children and a Pontiac on this road. There is also sightings of a driverless Volkswagen Beetle that appears out of nowhere. Numerous witnesses have reported seeing a dishevelled schoolboy wandering along the roadside appearing lost. According to accounts, there was an accident involving a young boy and his mother. The mother was tragically thrown from the vehicle and died upon impact, while the boy remained in the passenger seat with glass from the shattered windscreen piercing through his eye. To this day, it is believed that he continues to search the highway for her. Though less common these days, sightings of a Volkswagen Beetle isn't implausible on any road, but if you see one on the Carrick Highway, there should be more cause for concern. According to the legend, if you're driving late at night and come across the yellow Volkswagen, it will deliberately block your lane. As you overtake it, it inexplicably reappears in front of you, driving at a frustratingly slow pace. No matter how many times you pass it, the yellow Beetle persists to appear in front of you, almost as if it aims to cause an accident. And here's the chilling part. If you manage to glance over into the driver's seat, you won't find a soul living or dead behind the wheel. The story goes that a distraught man, having discovered his wife's infidelity, drove his yellow Beetle recklessly in search of her. Tragically, he ended up in a fatal collision. Another tale tells of him being unfaithful. Distraught by the realisation of what he had done, the story played out the same. To this day, sightings of a yellow Beetle continue to send shivers down the spines of those who travel the Carrick Highway at night. Many motorists passing through the Carrick Highway claim to have seen a Pontiac flying above the road. A Pontiac in Malay folklore is believed to be a woman who died during childbirth and is now seeking revenge. There are claims of a couple's car breaking down on the highway in the middle of the night. As a rule of thumb, it is suggested not to leave the car and rather wait for help. For whatever reason, to the wife's protest, the husband got out of the car. While waiting, the wife fell asleep, but was awoken by the sound of thumping. Knowing the rule, she decided to stay put. As time went by, the thumping got louder and louder, to the point of becoming unbearable. The Before the woman could get out, a police car arrived at the scene and shone a spotlight on the car. The policeman in the car instructed her to come over to the driver's side, slowly get out of the car and walk towards them. Although unnerved by the strange instructions, she followed them. As she made her way towards the police car, the policeman repeatedly told her to not look back. All this while the banging continued. She eventually gave in to her curiosity and turned to sneak a peek, only to find a monstrous creature on the roof of the car. The sound is said to have been coming from the woman's husband being ate by the creature, while his head was being banged against the roof of the car. The creature then flew off the car and disappeared into the night. As we reach the final leg of our journey, we arrive at the Devil's Highway, once aptly named Route 666. Found along Route 66, perhaps the most famous road in the United States, if not all of the world, Route 666 began its life in 1926. Though sounding sinister, it was named to follow the numbering regulations set out by the American Association of State Highway Officials. Being the 6th branch of Route 66, spanning almost 200 miles, Route 666 serves the Four Corners region, running through Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. Hailed as one of the most haunted places in America, supernatural occurrences witnessed include UFOs, ghosts, skinwalkers, hellhounds, and even a sedan driven by Satan himself. The nickname of Devil's Highway may hold some merit. Now renamed US Route 491, the road was nicknamed the Devil's Highway because of the correlation to the number 666 being attributed to the number of the beast in the Christian Bible, combined with a high fatality rate along the New Mexico portion, convinced some people the highway was cursed. The highway passes through the tribal nations of the Ute tribe and the Navajo Nation, containing two mountains considered sacred by Native Americans, Ute Mountain and an extinct volcanic core named Shiprock, both having supernatural tales of their own. One such occurrence witnessed by multiple individuals is that of a semi-truck barreling down the highway at breakneck speeds, sometimes engulfed in flame, terrorising drivers and running cars off the road. Some witnesses claim a demonic entity with glowing eyes is the culprit sat behind the wheel of the red semi. One eyewitness account was put forward by Linda Dunning in her book Spectres and Doorways, which comes on behalf of her husband. Apparently the man was driving down Route 666 late at night and in the distance saw a burning truck flying towards him with no signs of stopping. He pulled off quickly to the side of the road and walked into the desert about 20 feet from his car in order to let the flaming truck pass safely. Could this be a real entity or perhaps just a deranged truck driver with no regard for his fellow man? Another story involving vehicles is that of a black 1930s sedan, alleged to have taken as many as 6 lives. Some say to be driven by Satan himself. Others report no driver at all. The sedan stalks the highway in the dead of night, striking terror into those unlucky enough to be caught in its beams. Much like the Yellow Beetle before it, efforts to outrun the vehicle will be made in vain. Accounts vary on whether the car is out to do real harm, racing right towards witnesses looking to collide head-on, or simply driving alongside aggressively honking its horn and revving its engine. Regardless, many witnesses' stories corroborate the car speeding off into the night, disappearing without a trace. Other tales tell of a young girl in a white dress, posing as a hitchhiker said to walk the desolate desert roads. She will mutter nothing other than an address if motorists stop to offer help, before vanishing before your eyes. People claim to have visited the address given by the girl, only to be told by the girl's mother that her daughter had passed away on Route 666. Considering the route passes through Navajo Nation, it likely won't come as a surprise to those familiar that there have been many skinwalker sightings on Route 666. In Navajo belief, it is said to not say the skinwalker name aloud as it attracts them, so be warned. Said to take the form of coyotes deliberately running into the road in an attempt to cause accidents. Failing this, entities have been said to appear in the backseat of travellers' vehicles. Perhaps actually related to the skinwalker sightings, or a case of mistaken identity, is sightings of a pack of hellhounds with glowing yellow eyes and sharp jagged teeth. said to run alongside a vehicle supernaturally fast, gnashing and tearing at the traveller's tyres. Finally, as we come to the end of this stretch of cursed road, we unsurprisingly go intergalactic, with witnesses reporting strange lights on the desert horizon, and UFOs appearing in the night sky. Drivers have reported losing their sense of time and appearing on the road again days later. Others disappear altogether, never to be seen again, possibly interlinked with UFOs. Or perhaps on Route 666, the veil between realities and dimensions is thin. Either way, as our journey comes to an end, we have to ask, did the prior events unfold due to supernatural happenings, or maybe the stress of being on the road? Are these entities and encounters real, or are they a product of an overtired driver's imagination? All I know is, paranormal is the new normal.